Perspective Shift is brought to you by fdailycoaching.com. If you're seeking assistance to help navigate you through a difficult time or feel challenged to reach your full potential, Frank Daly can guide you to a perspective that will allow you to utilize your imagination and experience a more fulfilling and satisfying life. Frank has been working with people for over 20 years as a coach, helping them understand the power they have to transform their lives.
Yeah, it's officially welcome to Perspective Shift, Tanis.
How we doing, Tanis? Great to have you here on the show with us.
Yeah.
Super. So nice to meet you two in person.
Yeah,
absolutely. Where are you tuning in from today?
You wouldn't know it. It's a Powell River, which is about 5 hours and 2 ferries north of Vancouver.
Oh, okay. All right.
It is literally the end of the line, the end of the Trans-Canada.
All right.
Goodness.
Yeah, and I'm living right beside the ocean, so I'm looking at the ocean right there, but you folks are landbound.
Yes,
yep. We're here in the desert.
Yep. Yeah.
Quite different ends of the world, but that's why technology is so cool.
Aren't we lucky?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is no distance. Yeah.
For those tuning in, Tanis is a psychotherapist and author. So we're very excited to have her on to chat, all things consciousness with us today. So we're just going to kind of dive right in and get things started. Frank, you want to kind of kick things off?
Yeah. So we like to know, like, how did you get started in this? When did your journey begin in this understanding of what was going on? I believe it happened when you were a lot younger. I believe most people, when they were young, knew this, but somehow they were hoodwinked out of it.
Yep.
Because I have experiences when I was a kid, and then I was hoodwinked out of it just to reiterate or refine that actually when I was a child, I knew this. So yeah, tell us your story, because I find it to be very fascinating.
Well, I think what really woke me up to my way of perceiving the world was different than a lot of people was when I was about six or 7 years old, and I was walking to school with friends of mine. And I said to one of them, "Why do you say nice things to me, but you think these not nice things about me?" And she was shocked that I knew what she was thinking, that I could hear what she was thinking. And then I tried that on my parents to see if I said one thing and thought another, could they tell the difference? And then I realized they couldn't. They couldn't tell the difference, and that I was hearing and seeing things that maybe not everybody was. And I liked what you said too, Frank, about what about children? And I've found that a lot of children see elementals. They see ghosts, they see angels, and they talk to these beings like they're friends, and have little tea parties for their friends.
Exactly.
And their parents sometimes go along with it, but it's play acting. And sometimes they say, well, there's no such thing. But the children realize that there's no such thing as Santa Claus at a very early age. And Rudolf Steiner talked about when the veils come down, and he said when children are about 7 years old and they go off to school, the first veil comes down for this unseen world. And then at puberty, the last veil comes down, the one because you're becoming more of a thinking person at that time. And then if they haven't come down in the first screening at 7, then they come down then. But my veils never came down. So, for good or bad.
Yeah. Well, I guess I guess it's all good or how you perceive it, because it's bad when it's your understanding of how life is and everyone else's is skewed because they can't see beyond the veil, or they can't see beyond the screen in which they're in.
Yeah, and I was listening to an interview with Temple Grandin,
Mhm.
the woman who works with animals and people with autism.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how everything she sees is in pictures, and and that there's people who are autistic who see incredible patterns, and that they're very mechanistic, and they're brilliant with mechanisms and organization and structures of things. And she said, but we're not teaching that in school.
Yeah.
And we're telling everyone that they have to be on computers, or they have to be a doctor or a lawyer. And what and so these people, not only are these people, not able to go down these certain paths, but their skills, their abilities are going to be lost to the world. And so I'm into celebrating the uniqueness of what everybody is, and how to help folks realize their full potential. This has been my lifetime work, really, and to do that, I believe we have to become conscious, and we have to have high self-esteem.
Let me ask you this, Tanis. So you mentioned the veil never came down for you. So I believe personally that the reason this veil comes down, or like we're talking about, is through conditioning. Through our social conditioning, through our media, through our parents, etc. And no fault of our parents. Again, a lot of our parents, it's just it's never clicked, and so for them, it's much more of a blind leading the blind type of thing, is how I usually like to say it. They're just passing on the knowledge that they, with good intent, hey, I'm trying to help this child adjust to this reality, if you will. So what kind of home life were your parents very in tune to these types of concepts? Were they very aware and awake to like this conscious realm that we're discussing? Or how did you avoid that conditioning, if you will? Were you not surrounded by a lot of media and television and movies and things like that? Were you much more growing up in nature? Tell us a little bit about that and how you were able to kind of, pierce through that, because that's awesome.
That's really funny, because I didn't grow up in nature. I grew up, my parents were hardware. They had a small mom and pop hardware store, and we had very little money. We used to live above the store on a very busy highway.
Oh, wow.
And my mom has Irish ancestry. My dad has English. So it's a combination of the head and the heart.
Yeah, there you
And you add,
Well
and
said.
yeah, and a lot of Irish people have this second sight. And so it does come down through my mom's side. However, she hid it. She used to hide it. And I remember once this man came into the hardware store, and she said to him, oh, you want a foil roasting pan? And he looked at her. How did you know? Oh, I was just sorting them out right now. So it was on my mind.
She had to cover her tracks.
Not been sorting them out.
Yeah.
So I started looking at how she kept on covering it up, and she never ever talked about this to me because she was hiding it. And so I learned how to hide it so that I could pass in the world as a perfectly well-functioning normal person.
Right.
And it's only, I don't know, the last couple of decades, I guess, my book started to come out that the veil, it's all out now. So
did you ever talk with your mom about this later on in life?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, after my dad died, and my mom was in her late 50s, I guess, at that time, or early 60s. I started taking her to meditation groups, to First Nations medicine circles, to Buddhist meditations, and she started studying with me. She actually, it's interesting that she became my student.
At your institute?
Yes, and when we did tours to sacred sites of the world, and I did that for 22 years, taking groups of people to sacred sites of the world to help open the sacred sites for the earth and also to open them. And and whenever Mom was in a group that I was teaching, she was always Margaret.
Yeah.
She wasn't Mom, she was Margaret. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Very interesting story.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, that's the journey we're all here to do, right? Like, 'cause if you look at like life, it's like this hero's journey, and part of that is leaving home. But most of us forget we left home to actually return home, where obviously you didn't forget you left home. You just knew you left home, but you were understanding there is home. And just like your mom in a full circle, she realized what she had, she can now talk about later on in her life, where before she had to fly under the radar, almost kind of like how Superman when he was young. He had opportunity. Yeah, well, yeah, he couldn't show his powers. He wouldn't be able to conduct himself in society, so he had to hide it. And he hid it as Clark Kent. And
Yeah.
this is the story that permeates out through history, and people watch it, but they don't see it's them. They don't really see it's them. And you're presenting this as this is who we are.
And isn't it wonderful that we're at a time where so many people are wanting to be fully who they are
Yeah.
and are prepared to risk this deeper self, their soul, nature, and step forward.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
As far as like for you personally, one thing that I've noticed, it's interesting that you were keen to this at such an early age, right? And you understood, man, there's something going on here, and this is weird. I can see my parents, they're not, getting this when it comes to like the telepathy that we're talking about, that you experienced at a young age. But a lot of people allow this to kind of get covered up. They'll see the outside world like with their parents or with their friends, and they'll say, oh, this, I don't know what's going on with me, this is kind of weird, and they try to bury it, where you kind of just were aware and you're like, this is funny, and like you would witness and watch your mom even, and you would say to yourself, oh, she's covering it up, and you kind of just like kept going with it. Was there ever a point in your life where you were challenging this type of these ideas or trying to bury them, or have you always really kind of carried that with you?
A couple of things happened that helped me. One was that I had a near-death experience when I was hanging from a rope tow skiing. Yeah, it was one of those freak accidents where my scarf got twisted around the rope tow and I went up, 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 and there I was hanging by my neck.
Yeah.
And I was only 19 years old, and I had no fear. And time stopped, and I saw that I had two clear choices: that I could go then. My necks had to get around that pulley at the top, and so I could go, or or and then I saw my parents would be devastated. If that happened, I saw clearly exactly how that would affect them. And then I saw the other choice. I heard, but you won't be able to start your real work until you're 28. You have to put in time. And I had a choice, and I chose to stay. So that gave me sort of my purpose was there, and I went to university and traveled around the world with a backpack for 3 years off and on, and put in my time till I was 28.
All right.
I think that's cool that you mentioned the number 20. 28 was the year I woke up to these type of concepts. So I tell people, I lived 28 years fully in this condition reality, not knowing what's going on. And I actually looked into that one time, and there was something, I can't remember what it was, but it was talking about how there is like a cycle, like a 28-year cycle, and it's coming back to yourself, the creator.
Well, it's
And
every 7 years.
I thought that was very interesting, though, and I
Yeah.
was like, and they're that it was recognized that way, and so that's beautiful.
Yeah, if you you look at every 7 years a cycle. So
Oh, okay.
28 goes into it 4 times.
Oh, okay.
So it's a numerology thing, but that's how cycles are. Now, prior to this incident at 19, have you ever confided in anybody, any confidence, or any someone you could confide in?
Yeah, did you have like a mentor that you were able to speak with?
Oh, no, and I'll tell you why. My brother had these gifts as well, and he started walking in his sleep and would end up outside, standing on the highway, carrying loads of books, and he got sent to a psychiatrist. And so and he was my younger brother, and I saw this and I thought, whoa,
Yeah, stay away from that.
Yeah, stay away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another great thing happened in my first year of university. A psychiatrist actually came to the residence where I was living, and he said he was looking for young women to go and work with, in the closed men's wards of the mental hospital in Toronto, and as a volunteer. And I was one of these volunteers. And this is at the time when people were locked up for insanity. And literally there were bars and a locked door that I went into, and then they closed the door behind me. And these men had not been out of that one ward for 5 years or more. And they came up to me and they were talking to me about what they saw, people who were diagnosed schizophrenic. And what was so interesting is I saw what they saw. And yet they were diagnosed and in there, and I was walking around. And I realized what the difference was between them and me, that their shell was open. It was like they had a hole so that they couldn't shut it down.
Yeah.
Whereas my shell is, I'm protected, so that it's like turning on a different radio station. I can turn on that radio station, or I can turn on the station to talk to you guys. So then I realized that what we had to do with people who were diagnosed with schizophrenia or something like that because of earlier woundings, perhaps, in their life, is that we had to help them close the shell, first of all, but that it's an organic process for that shell to open when we have a strong enough personality that we can open it then to our soul to become a soul-infused personality. But first of all, you have to be steady and strong in the personality.
Now, are you seeing a correlation right now? We're hearing a lot of people talk about Alzheimer's. And a lot of times when I read about this, the people that are diagnosed with Alzheimer's are seeing things that everyone else in the room can't see, and they're still labeling it as a disease because we don't fully understand it. And I think there is a correlation. They could see beyond the veil at that moment in their time as they're seemingly understanding the exiting of this physical body or this physical realm. Have you ever looked into studying stuff like that?
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And a lot of people, when they're getting close to death, will talk to people, like say, oh, my mom's there, my grandmother's there. Other people are saying, oh, no, they're not. But they are, because that veil between our third dimensional physical world and the astral world. This is what we're talking about with Alzheimer's or close to death or schizophrenics, for example, or mystics, for example. I would say I'm a mystic.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a schizophrenic, but I'm functioning one if I am.
No, you're grounded in you understand the reality in which the world
Yeah.
lives in, but you see beyond the reality in which the world lives in. So you somewhat, yeah, like
Truly gifted.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hopefully no one comes and knocks on my door after this interview.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, with a stray jacket.
So anyway, this is where we are all going in this next stage in our consciousness.
Yes.
It is the astral world. And that's where we go when we are asleep and dream. We're dreaming, we're in the astral world. When we're dead and between lives, guess where we are? In the astral world. And in the astral world, we use telepathy. We just think it and hear it.
Yeah.
And we can travel in space and time wherever we want to go, and we can create the reality that we are envisioning. So all of these things are going to happen for all of us in this next 2,000 years. So isn't it a wonderful time that we're still alive to bring that to?
Yeah, and
It is exciting.
yeah, and emphasize that, because I heard you talk about this. I've studied this too. Emphasize for people out there that probably haven't heard this, what cycle of energy is the planet coming onto, and all the individuals in here experience right now? Because people there's a lot of turmoil. I'm like, yeah, but it's almost like when a plane is landing, if you don't understand it's landing, you feel the G-force of it. But if you understand it's landing, you accept the G-force as, hey, we're almost here. That's how I look at what's going on. People think, oh my God, oh my God. I'm like, no, it's a transition. Every time a child comes through the birth canal, it's painful, but what's on the other side is so glorious. So you withstand the pain. Or is it pain, or is it just tenseness to get us ready for that next veil, or going through that veil? Can you explain that to people out there that may not understand these concepts, just looking at the world as face value?
Yeah, it's sort of like that glass half empty or glass half full, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, we're seeing the death of the old world structure that we've known it. And this is, of course, causing a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. And we're in the time that Rome was in when it became decadent, and when Atlantis went down. So and Egypt, and so it's the end of our civilization, and the natural inclination of people is to try to hang on. And this is a fear response. It's interesting. I'm going to be doing a course on freedom from fear starting in the fall. And it's especially because of this, because fear is the main thing that is causing all of our problems in the world and all of the actions that people are taking.
Yeah.
And it really goes down to the lower chakras. Fear is a base survival instinct.
Yeah.
And when we're in fear, we're not able to move to our heart. We're not in love. We're not in service. We're not seeing, all these good things that are going to happen. So what is going on in this next 2,000 years when we're moving from the Piscean to the Aquarian age is that, first of all, during this ending process of the current civilization, we have to go through the lower astral realms. Now, the lower astral realms are it's the hell realms. It really is the hell realms. So it's all the thought forms that we've created of greed, lust, war, poverty, everything, all these thought forms, we have to eradicate. We have to transform because we've created them.
Mm-hmm.
And we create them through, we transform them through forgiveness, compassion, tolerance, acceptance, service, all these wonderful things. And as so we have to go through that collectively as humanity to get to the higher astral realms, which is the angels and the, being enlightened humans.
Yeah.
It's the sign of the Aquarian age is the water bearer. It's the enlightened human who pours the water of life onto the earth. So we are meant to be guardians of this beautiful planet, but conscious guardians. So I'm like you. I'm like you, Frank, and I'm optimistic and I think, well, this is the process of just eradicating and transforming what we've created. And we can have our foot in 3 different worlds simultaneously, so that we're down here in the physical realm. We're also in the hell realm, partially, right? Eradicating our old limitations because we're still here, for heaven's sakes. And at the same time, have these higher aspirations that we know where we're going, and we know that those are the qualities that we need to practice. And the more we practice them, the lighter that hell realm becomes. And I think that we do this not just for ourselves, but for the collective of humanity.
Because in transmutation because that's like the idea of like doing for others, and you go back to like someone like Nietzsche, where thought it was a bad realm to do for others because then you're negating yourself. But what he didn't understand, or maybe he understood, but he said it differently. When you actually do for others, you're simultaneously doing for yourself. So it's not like this tearing apart of my soul or my individual personality or persona. But when I give service to others, I'm enlightening myself of all burdened of things around me. I know, and therapists will do this. Like if someone's depressed, they tell them, go give your attention to somebody else and see how long that depression lasts. So it's not like, okay, I can't wait for Saturday on the weekend or Sunday to have time to myself. I'm like, all time is yourself. We have to slowly distance from from the understanding of like vacationing and work. Like they're all one. They're never split from it. We think we're split or separate. And that's the veil you're talking about. But we're learning this. And I could feel it myself when I was reading your book, Good Morning, Henry. In the part when you were talking about neutral positive, I thought that was a brilliant way of explaining it. Like, yes, you're aware of what's going on around you, but then you become neutral to any outcome and you kind of transcend it, but you're aware of it. So you're not knocking anyone, you're not judging anyone. You don't come across as schizophrenic, as what people would think. But all of a sudden you allow people to go to the level in where you are. And that's the transcendence. That's what you want. So you're holding this place for people. Like I was reading this book, you were holding this place for me through the words, and it allowed me to transcend to that place. But you were having this conversation with Henry, and you were inviting me along, and whoever else reads the book. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Will you
Yeah.
touch on that neutrality? Because that's something that comes up often on this, broadcast that Frank and I do. It is in neutrality that we can really find ourselves.
Yeah, I call it the neutral positive. And that is being a witness to ourselves. And the ego, we talked just a moment ago about fear and how fear is so prevalent in our world, both out there and in here. And the way to get past the ego is by creating this witness, and the witness is this neutral. And the reason I say positive is, although we are neutral about whatever is being presented to us, we are optimistic. It's like this dash of optimism about whatever is happening is for the best. It's obviously for the best because Spirit's doing it.
Yes.
So we can't second guess Spirit, really.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, almost kind of like me reading your book. I'm a guest, and my job is to read it, not to change it. And I think people are trying to change the outside world. I'm like, the story's already written. It's just, if you trust it and understand it and know it, you'll go with the flow rather than fighting the current. And fighting the current is where we suffer. But when you go with the flow, if you're in a river and you're getting pulled down it, but if you understand how water works, you will never get sucked down. It's fighting it that makes you drown. And a lot of people don't understand the physics or the realm behind of what's happening. They think it's, oh my God, like the second coming of the Roman Empire is collapsing. I'm like, yeah, everything worked out. Jesus came along. The Roman Empire fell not too long after, Jesus' idea of this person who taught this world of grace came along. And now we're in the second one. And here Tanis is talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, no, but like it's 2,000 years and these cycles, and you look at them like, okay, this is where we are. And I think a lot of people, like I talk to people on the daily about this, and I do it in a gentle way because I don't want to freak anybody out. But it's amazing how people like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, like
It's
this
because we all naturally know this.
This is happening for us, not to us. It's like sitting and watching a movie. Just enjoy it, and don't get too terrified.
And what's so amazing about you two guys is that each of you will attract different people to you through your own filter, through your own life experiences. You have a certain magnetism that magnetizes people to you. And when you put two of you together, I always say when you've got two people, you've either got more than two or less than two.
Yeah.
So how do you have 1 + 1 = 3?
Yeah.
Right? And those are the kind of interdependent, co-creative relationships we want. And that's what the Aquarian age is all about. It's about co-creation.
Yes.
And it's about interdependence and relationship. So it's wonderful being invited by you today. I interrupted you though, Mike. What were you going to say?
Not at all. Not at all. I appreciate it. And thank you so much. Seriously, that's a huge compliment and we do appreciate it. I guess while we're on the book, why don't you tell us a little bit, who is Henry? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because we want to encourage anyone listening to this to get a copy and dive right in. So tell us a little bit about who Henry is.
Okay. Henry turns out to be, I thought that when I first started writing the book, Henry was my body elemental, my body consciousness that builds my body from lifetime to lifetime, both physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So I've been talking to my body consciousness for a long time. And, but that's the way I always thought of it, is that, it's the consciousness in my body. As we go through the book, we find out that Henry not only is the body consciousness, but is spirit in form. It's the Holy Spirit. It's really the Divine Mother. It's the holy wisdom of Sophia. And what was interesting, Mike, is that I never would have started writing the book if I thought I was going to be writing a book, having a conversation with the Divine Mother. And so it was like I was tricked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, funny how it happens. Like it's synchronistic because, the universe is so well organized. That's why people are like, as humans, we're really good at pattern recognition. So we could see patterns, but it's so well organized that you get looped into this. But if you understand it, you kind of chuckle because like, you got me. Like, all right. Because psychologically, like, I don't want to sound weird because you understand how people may portray this. But I tell you, when you read this book, there's nothing weird about it. It's brilliant. It really is. It pulls you in, um, I don't know how to explain it beyond that, but it really, it almost feels like I was writing it, if that makes sense.
Oh, wow. That's the greatest compliment.
It
The
almost
great
felt that. Yeah.
compliment that it's touching who you really are.
Yeah.
When we read something or we hear somebody speak, I think that each of us has a kind of truth or honesty register in us, and that and we know that it's honest and it's truthful, or we know it's not.
Yeah.
And there's something that comes through, and even sometimes I've heard people use all the right words even, but I didn't trust them. Have you ever had that experience?
Called a politician.
Oh yeah. Yeah, right. Oh yeah. And Frank and I were actually talking about just that this morning together, off camera, before we jumped on. So it's very funny that you bring that up, because that's something that he mentioned. He's like, man, we've had this since we were kids. We know when somebody's,
Yeah, it's like the politician, the car salesman. And inadvertently, you then know when someone is telling the truth. And it's funny. It's also when someone's telling the truth, it's no longer about the words, it's about the field of energy you get pulled into. Be like, oh my God, even like here, like I'll come home and Karen will like, how was the interview? I'm like, it was great. What did you guys say? I'm like, I don't remember.
It's
But it was the energy, because the energy's so good. I could feel it right now, even though you're in Canada. There is no space and time in that facet, but it's the energy, and the words come out of us didn't come from a place of remembrance other than the English language, right? Everything else just flows through us in this channeling type of setting. Sounds like that's exactly how you wrote this book.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm totally conscious. Sometimes people think, hey, is she channeling stuff? And no, I'm totally conscious, just like I'm speaking with you.
Yes.
But even though I'm conscious, I'm in my higher self. And in this book, this conversation, of course, Henry, the Divine Mother, the Holy Spirit, gets to be the profound one, and I get to be it's sort of like a comedy act between the really, the clown that,
like the Abbott Costello.
Yeah, the Abbott and Costello, and the one who's always screwing up.
Yeah.
That's me in the book. Please tell me, because I sure need help.
Yeah.
So I cast myself in that role because that, I believe, is the universal personality role.
Yeah.
It's not just me. It's all the things that everybody like me is going to be saying and asking. It's the universal personality.
From a fractal perspective, after completing this and realizing, and getting through to the end where, you make that connection with the divine, was there this overwhelming sense of like, wow, I've been talking to myself the whole time?
Wow, that is interesting. What I had to go through was my lack of self-worth.
Which is very common, I feel like.
Yes, it is incredibly common. And that's probably why I didn't find out till halfway through, Mike, was because we don't want to seem arrogant or prideful or anything like that. And that is how we get in our own way, really, if we think about it. How can we be our authentic self if we don't overcome this sense of, oh, maybe people will think I'm trying to make myself special, right? We have to get over this to let it go and just be ourselves.
Well, what's so funny about that is like what Frank and I were talking about off camera before we jumped on here. One of the things I was sharing with Frank that I love most about you was, despite the topic or what you're talking about, etc., you have this like very absolute sense of knowing. It's not like you're describing something and you're kind of unsure about it or unsure of how it may be perceived, but it's like this very absolute knowing. And it's so like magnetized that like I just, it like draws me further and further in. And so how did you kind of get comfortable with that knowing, like what you're talking about right here? Essentially you're saying like it's hard to get past that, but it's in getting past that you become truly connected with source. At least that's how I believe. And like Frank, you were mentioning, it's less about a belief behind something, but a knowing is what solidifies that wave into particle. What's your take on that?
I talk only about what I do know. And I have no fear at all of saying what I don't. For example, I'm not an enlightened person. I'm not enlightened. I'm not awake. I'm on the path, but I'm not awake. I don't try to cast myself as something I'm not. And if I went to a gym, I wouldn't know what one thing to pick up first or second.
Me either.
I go every day and I still don't know. Whenever the first thing I grab, I'm like, all right, that looks good.
That's funny.
So I think it's it's not being afraid again to say I don't know, and then to say, and I'd like to learn, and to be willing to start at scratch. Really at scratch. And I think because my parents were really humble, and that we didn't have anything easily, that and also Canadians tend to be modest.
Yeah, it's not like if Americans showing all the, like, you don't have like cribs. What's that? MTV cribs. We go into people's homes.
Your house.
Yeah, it's a weird concept. Like you go into somebody else's house with a camera. I'm like, where all the grids are.
Yeah, right. but truly, such an impressive trait and quality about you, Tanis, is that. And so it's very, very
but it's very magnetic by having that. So you have this unwavering confidence with this softness of, I only know what I know. And I think that's always throughout time, it's always, those humans are always attracted by that.
And it's a quality of a leader. And that's something I just appreciate. Yeah. So I figure I bring that up to you.
Oh gosh, guys, can I have another interview with you tomorrow morning?
Absolutely.
Take the day off, right?
We get yeah.
Oh, that's well, I'm going to switch gears on you now, Tanis, and I'm going to move into something I really wanted to ask you about. And so you have something called the Ethera clearing technique, correct? Or is it etheric? How would I say that?
Etheric, yes.
Etheric clearing technique. Can you, for our audience, go over what that is? And then I just kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into burning away the old thought forms, if you don't mind.
Okay. We offer that in a program called Transform Yourself.
Okay.
And what it is that how to talk about it. We've all got these thought forms. So we talked about the thought forms a minute ago. We've all got these thought forms, and some of them we do not want anymore, right?
Yep.
These can be guilts, regrets, greeds, can be anything, jealousies, envies, things that we're not proud of. So these old thought forms, we realize are not great. We want to get rid of them. So how are we going to do it? We're going to use, once again, the body elemental, the body consciousness, the Holy Spirit. And if you remember, the Holy Spirit was descended onto the heads of the disciples.
Yep.
Remember? And then they became enlightened. So the Holy Spirit's fire, it came as a fire, the Holy Spirit fire is nothing other than our own Kundalini energy. So how do we raise our own Kundalini energy and clear all the chakras using the Holy Spirit coming down our soul, coming down through all of our chakras, grabbing it and going up our central channel and clearing. So that's what the etheric clearing technique basically does. It's like if we have, so we've got 7 chakras, and each of these chakras can be open to a different amount, right? They can be open to a different amount given how great we are in one quality. For example, if we've got an open heart, we might have a more open heart chakra. Mm-hmm. If we have been sexually wounded, we could have a more closed base, root chakra, and second chakra, right? If our husband or wife left us, then we could have a closed second chakra for relationship. So what we're trying to do is to become enlightened, all of our chakras have to be open and the energy has to flow nicely. So we're trying to go through each of the chakras, looking at the thought forms that are in each of these chakras to then get them evened out to then, clear this.
Absolutely.
It's a very, very powerful technique. And we've been using it. I've been using it for many decades, but I started teaching it actively about 20 years ago. And people go back to the process year after year. Yeah, because we get more thought forms.
Well, yes, exactly. Yeah. And so one thing that you often talk about is you talk about the debris in this field. So that debris is the thought forms, correct?
It is. And then when you look at what fires can we use? Well, we use the violet fire because the violet fire has the highest frequency in this manifested world. And they even use ultraviolet in operating rooms to sterilize. Yeah. So it is a sterilizing quality.
Nice. And you can use that on all 7 energy centers, correct?
Yes, you can. You can.
See, I love that.
Yeah, because that's like, obviously, when you look at the first 3 chakras, the base, the one that right below the navel, and then your solar plexus, they're all part and parcel of what we call the survival. So as we clear those, we can get more into this higher realm where we actually start hitting the heart, our throat to speak, and into the third eye, and then our crown chakra. So that's kind of what we're going through. That's why a lot of people are suffering from these diseases, whether it's constipation,
Yeah.
because what's happening, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the energy on this planet is rising so quickly. So people that haven't cleared it are experiencing more pain. It's almost like if the city pressure was at 50 pounds per second, or per,
PSI, yeah.
yeah, PSI. And they said, okay, next week we're going to put it up to about 60. So you better make sure your pipes are clear. It's going to bust some pipes because the energy is coming in stronger. And I think that's why people in the past maybe were able to tolerate it to a degree, but now it's like you can't tolerate it. So people are suffering. I'm like, yeah, but if you clear your pipes, if you clear the energy field, you'll feel the exhilaration of the energy coming through rather than the pain because it's blocked. Is this kind of how you see it?
Totally. You
Yeah.
couldn't, boy, that's a great way of talking about it. That is exactly it. And I think that a lot of our, mental illnesses are being caused because of this too, because the energy is just going crazy.
Yeah.
And our physical diseases. So it's get those pipes cleared.
Yeah.
Yeah. Call the plumber.
Yeah. Truly.
Yeah, Tanis will help you with that system. Clearing out those
No,
chakras.
no, you guys will help it with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Well, yeah, I guess we're all playing a part here, and it's all for the greater good. Like I said, like we do the show, just I do the show personally because I learn from it and I feel better. I don't think for a moment I know more than somebody else. I may know different. That's obvious, but I don't think it's more or better. But I'm learning through the process. Like you said, we're all on this path. I feel these moments of enlighten, and then you get smacked in the head, right? It's like, I remember Eckhart Tolle, because you mentioned it before, but I remember he was did a conference, and somebody asked like, what's it like to feel enlightened? And he, like Eckhart Tolle's fat, he just looks around and he goes, am I enlightened?
I don't know.
He questioned, like, I don't know if I am. And I thought it was brilliant because he wasn't like, well, I'll tell you what it feels like to be enlightened. He's like, no, I don't know what that is. And it was brilliant because everyone in the audience at that moment got it. Because we think, okay, I want to get to that. He's like, no, we're all here. He's just presenting it different than we may have ever heard. You're presenting it different than we may have heard. And that resonates with me because the more people like you come into my life, the more I realize, there's no second guessing this. I don't need to have fear. I don't second guess it now. I know it's working, you know? And you get these moments where you feel the energy building up. I'm like, oh, just clear it. Just let go.
Yeah.
It's fun. Let go of the rope and you'll have fun.
Each of us needs to be confirmed.
Yeah.
Confirmed that we're on the right path. That strengthens us.
It does.
That's where synchronicity comes in. Those little breadcrumbs, you're on the right path.
Yeah, that is the yeah.
Absolutely. What do you guys do when you're not doing this program?
Yeah, absolutely. Frank, you want to
I
start?
just stare at a wall. No, I joking. I do a number of things. I coach, help people coach in this way. Kind of life coaching, but more from the essence of teaching them how to look at life differently. I give them the tools to coach themselves because I believe everyone already has the ability to do it. Also, too, professionally, I own a hair salon. I do hair, which
Oh,
yeah. So I've been doing it 33 years. So I've always had a captured audience.
haha,
Yeah, I've
lovely.
always, so these
Love.
discussions always flow. And I know over the last 10, 12 years, just about every one of my clients will tap into these conversations. And I don't
It's the
force it.
clientele you're attracting.
I don't
know it.
force it at all. I don't need to talk about it at all. They're here for their hair. They're here to whatever. And all of a sudden, somehow it just comes up. Yeah, I'm not here to preach to people. I don't like that. I wouldn't like that to me. But I've noticed more and more people are actually opening up to these thoughts and ideas, which almost helps me to realize, okay, wow, the world is becoming better. It really is. And people are like, oh my God, the world's going to hell in a handbag. I'm like, well, it's one way of looking at it. Right?
That is fantastic that you're reaching people through that. I feel the same way about my own hairstylist. We have who did my hair
The
actually.
hair looks very
Looking
nice,
great.
by the way.
Thank you very much. So I feel the same way. We're very close. We're like family.
Yeah.
And another profession which gets a captive audience where people get really talk deeply is being a bartender.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about
The Irish are familiar with that.
Yeah, seriously.
yeah,
Frank and I are
that's
both
right.
Irish.
That's right. And what about you, Mike? What are you doing when you're not doing this program?
No, absolutely. But I do want to touch on Frank. So that's actually how Frank and I met. Was my mother was a client of Frank's for the last 12, 13, 14, 15 years. I can't recall. And I remember, like maybe my mom has always, talked about Frank in such a great light and always had this connection. And then one day my barbershop that I went to, something happened. He was out of town or he had to close up shop or something. And I was like, hey, I was telling my mom I need to find somebody to cut my hair, my old barber. She's like, oh, just go see Frank. Because Frank's been a family friend of ours, for quite some time.
Oh.
And so I started to sit in this chair with Frank. And it was like I was watching, myself begin to grow. And I guess what I mean by that is it started with these like different little conversations that Frank and I would have. I would open up a little bit about where I was at in life or what was going on. And Frank would throw in these different little perspectives. And that led ultimately to me beginning to go to his meditations, and then from there, us doing this podcast and this broadcast. And so it's very cool to see the evolution of that. And I truly believe Frank is attracting these clientele. And we all know this, but
as well as you.
Yeah,
well, I'm also attracted. It works both ways equally.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. Magnetic. You can't say which pole is stronger than the other. They're magnetically equal.
Yep.
And it's the brilliance of it. Yeah.
And then professionally speaking, Tanis, I work in real estate. And so I do residential and some commercial real estate. And so I work on that, anything on the development side of things as well, a lot of different land sales and working on, getting buildings up in the air. And so that's what I do when I'm not doing perspective shift.
He creates a sacred ground.
Are you happy? And are you happy in that profession? Are you able to be your full self?
See, I do feel like I am, and it's exciting because I watch, and it's very cool to see the clientele that I get introduced to, or the people that I'm attracting. And I have this conversation with Frank often, and it's like, just when I'm needed most, I'm like connected with some person, who's looking to create or start that journey. And I watch these conversations I have with my clients, or just the connection we make, and it is so fulfilling. It's honestly, it's the first time in my life I feel like I've found, like I feel like I'm on the right path. And it's something I'm so passionate about. So yes, I do get that feeling each and every day, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, and I can confirm that because every time I talk to him, he doesn't like, oh, I sold 3 houses today. It's like, you're not gonna believe who I ran into.
Yeah,
like it's like the real estate is the background of his life. It's he meets all these different people. And it's always like, you're not going to believe this. And it has nothing to do with selling that. He doesn't even talk about how much money he makes and nothing. It's just, and so he's
the people
he's like a kid in
meet.
the candy store.
Yeah, like just the different walks of life that I sit down with at a table to strategize or go to lunch with when we're working on a project. It's mind blowing because it's just so funny. I would never imagine myself in the room with these different walks of life and people who are trying to start and create. And it's like I'm getting these like different friends, or I'm making these different friendships that I never could have imagined. And I think that's what's so cool. And I hear so many, I watch, well, one thing also too, Tanis, before I that I want to bring up. So I was a musician, early on in life, and I signed a record deal. I got to tour all over, the United States, internationally. I've been all over. I've been to Canada several times, all over the place.
Are
And
you a singer or guitarist
I'm a
or?
guitar player, yeah, and a lyricist. I also did a lot of our lyrics, but
We should write a song together.
we should.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I see like the same passion that I had in meeting all these different walks of life, through music. I'm seeing that in my real estate profession. And I think that is what I am so drawn to, and what I love so much about, the music side of things before was the people it introduced me to, and the different lifestyles and cultures, and just, it was so eye-opening. And I find that same type of effect in my everyday, profession, which is unique to me. So I think that's what I've been going for.
Excellent. Just wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so happy for both of you that you're enjoying your work so much.
Yeah.
I worked in the corporate world as a management consultant for over 3 decades, as
Okay.
well as being a psychotherapist and
Yeah.
doing tours to sacred sites. And I loved working in the corporate world because I got to meet such a diversity of people. Everything from IBM to banks to government agencies. It was wonderful, and people are people.
Yes, the corporate structure is there, but the individuals,
Yeah.
still individuals, and I think people like the corporate world. I'm like, well, it's a weird thing. It's the people that we're connecting with, not with the actual physical structure of it. And when we connect with those people, the way the structure turns out, it starts to shift and change. So I'm about
Totally.
getting rid about corporations. It's about enlightening corporations.
It's funny,
Yeah.
Tanis, we've done a lot of these different interviews, and that was the first time a guest has ever asked us what we do outside of perspective shifts.
They probably just assume that's all we do.
It's very
Yeah,
cool that you
yeah,
brought that up. We've
yeah,
just never been asked that question ever.
yeah. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah.
Well, I often think that what we all need to be is cancers for good, that we infiltrate all these different professions, and we start changing them from within,
Yeah.
Yes.
and helping other change agents who are within, and kind of strengthen them to do more.
Yeah, I come across that. I have people like sit in my chair or just come across and they're like they feel like they're in the wrong position in life. And I'm like, well, before you make the decision on a position, how do you feel? What's your outlook on it? Because you might be in the right position or you might not. We'll find out. But it's how you're looking at it. Because there's nothing greater than the service to others.
Uh-huh.
Everything is service. I don't care who you are. Whether you're the guy sweeping the hair at my salon or you're Bill Gates, we're all servicing each other. And one capacity is not better than the other. That's just an illusion. We come to understand that. And so people sometimes get caught up in the accolade of a certain position and say, I want to be in that, and that's why I'm not happy. I'm like, no, that has nothing to do with it. But you might be in that position, that you might be the CFO of a company. But if you are, you want to be in the position of enlightened or understanding of collective consciousness and how everyone is contributing equally in their own valid, rather than look at me, I'm at the top. Because anyone that makes it top knows this,
Well,
that it's tough if they think they have to hold it.
one of the
Yeah.
things Frank always told me, I remember sitting down with Frank and, having these deep conversations and stuff, but it's just, it's not our job to get in there and tell people how to experience their journey. It's our job to be the light, and that's what attracts people to this path. It's not, hey, you need to be doing this because look at how great it's worked out for me. It's a natural, it kind of like how Frank was describing your book, Tanis, like you're holding this vibration, and those reading it rise to that vibration, and you're lifting them up. And that's our role in our different, you know, extracurricular activities, professions, etc. Is we need to be that light for others. And when people see that shining, it helps them to level up, if you will. And the more we can do that for others, man, that's how we create true change.
That is so valid, and it's beyond words. Yes, we use words sometimes to be able to reach people here or in their heart, but it really is the frequency. It's the frequency that each of us generate that does do that. So it's even being in their presence is going to change them.
Exactly.
And that, because like years ago, people worried about like, you know, okay, choose your words wisely and focus on that stuff, and how you feel doesn't matter, which we're realizing even in physics, how we feel actually creates the physical matter in which we're in, be it good or bad, and how we look at it. But I tell people, like, get into a good state and you'll know what to say. Because often people come to me, hey, I got this issue with so and so. What should I say? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you what to say. I can't do that. But I can coax you into a state where the words will come out beautifully. Because at every altitude is a scene. And what scene do you want to see? If you want to see the whole valley, you got to get to the top of that mountain. So, but if you're at the base of the mountain, you're not going to see the whole valley. So it's not about your eyesight, it's about the perspective and where you are. And so when you focus on your frequency, like you mentioned, then the right words will come out at that time. But you can't, but if you, like a politician tries to speak from the top of the mountain, but they're in the valley, that's what are you doing? You're describing it completely wrong.
And that's why we can all
Because
feel it.
when they're not at the altitude, but they understand what to say, because they probably actually had a speechwriter that was enlightened, but they weren't, and they read it verbatim. I've had a speechwriter, but the speechwriter is like, hey, you have to feel it. You can't just say it.
Yeah.
And that's probably what happens. Maybe the speechwriters should be running the country.
And this is part of the problem with some of the envies and jealousies and fears people have, is that they don't start on the path. They want to be at the final summit and attain their goal, but they don't commit to the step that's right in front of them. They say, you know, and that's all Spirit asks for us. It just says, just commit to the first step. You don't need to see step 10 at this point.
No.
When we do step 1 because we heard we had to do it, then we see step 2 because we heard we had to do it. And before you know it, you're at 4 or 5 and you're starting to see 10, you know, but people are afraid that if it's not safe enough to see actually what they're going to get at number 10, they just don't embark.
It's the ultimate game of scavenger hunt. You only get the result from the first piece of information will lead you to the next. But you can't skip over it. You'll never get there.
I do believe that only exists, though, because of the heavy conditioning that we go through. Because we come into this world with this, you know, gleam and this knowing, you know, or at least, and then that's kind of trained out of us, if you will. And it's like, hey, the outside world, you know, why we go through school and university and all this different stuff, and we're given a degree. You're now good enough to go get a job. You know, we're looking for that outside validation of you've now completed this, so now you can have it. And that's kind of why it's difficult, if you will, at least from a Western perspective, in my perspective, why so many people struggle with that is we have been taught that once we're validated by the outside world, then it's something real. But until that point, it's not. Even if you look back in history, you know, and we're talking, whenever I'm talking with people, the people that built like our country or built, you know, their countries. I mean, we're talking people that, if they were lucky, had a high school education, but what they did have was an immense self of knowing. you know, of what
Yes.
could be accomplished and what they could accomplish. And that's what built and created, you know, these different professions, et cetera. You know, you look back at, you know, Aristotle and all these great, you know, all these great minds, and they were scientists, artists, et cetera, philosopher, all of these different titles, but yet no degrees, right? they didn't have a bunch of degrees all for them. No, they embodied it and
I think
became it.
Aristotle went to Harvard.
Yeah, exactly, right? You know, but that, you know, it's just so funny
Yeah.
where we look back and we're like, oh, how are these people all of these different things? And it was like because they knew it and they embodied it and they moved forth. And
Yes,
But
that's great.
they went on the journey. They didn't just come upon it.
yeah, and now we
Yeah.
feel like we need to, you know, really get this, you know, outside piece of paper that says you're now this.
Now, speaking of Aristotle, let's go into the ancestral stuff
Yeah,
that,
great stuff.
yeah.
So we know that you cover ancestors, both family ancestors and spiritual ancestors. What's something that you can share in regards to that with us?
Well, it's a stripping away process. What you were just talking about, I was thinking of a Buddhist axiom, which is to gain knowledge, you learn one thing every day, but to gain wisdom, you strip away one thing every day.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Great.
And yeah, and so I think that when we're only dealing with ourselves as we are in this world, just me, it becomes too tight. Our view of is too tight, and we need to look at our ancestors to really become aware of how much they are affecting us today. And so I do it in two ways. There are a lot of courses which just talk about family. So you're just talking about family, ancestors, parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, but that's not enough. We've got to look at the fact that we also get the karma of our nation.
Yeah.
You're American, I'm Canadian. We have a beaver as a national symbol. You have an eagle. Duh. What would that eagle do with that beaver? We don't want that. So
Great point.
but there are good things to be said about every archetype that the nation is developing, and so I often think you put a Canadian and American together and you've got the perfect human being.
I like that. I've never heard that. I like that.
Yeah. So anyway, so when we're doing ancestors, we talk about the nation, we talk about the tribe we belong to. So like I've got Irish genes, and I've got English genes, and I actually have Scandinavian genes.
Okay.
So what are the tribes? Because these also infiltrate my consciousness and the package I come down with. And then what we also do in like we've got two courses, one for that and then one for the spiritual ancestors. And I don't know anybody who's talking about the importance of spiritual ancestors, but we have to look at it, because I found that in doing thousands of past life regressions, that often we are the ancestor that created the problem we are having right now.
And so
well
you're
said.
saying we, as you were the soul in
Yeah.
that. So we're actually talking to ourselves at a different time, or a time and space in a different entity, but yet we're peering through the same. What's peering through the eyes of the
It's the
being
soul.
was the same.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
The soul would have sat down in
Yeah.
somebody 200 years ago that created the problem that you're having right now in your
Yeah.
current life. So that we look at, in spiritual ancestors, we look at that. We look at hybrid ancestors. Now, this is a really weird idea.
We're
And
into weird ideas.
I know you guys.
You're in good company.
Yeah.
I could tell that. And that is the possibility that each of us has not only Earth ancestors, but we could have other ancestors. So we
Well, I
could
know this is true.
Yeah.
elemental.
I know this.
Okay, there you go. So it could be that we have angelic ancestors or we could have elemental ancestors. We could have been a dolphin in another life
Mhm.
or a whale. We could be a star being, and we could be a dragon being.
Yep.
And that ancestry. We could be a mer person. There was once a green race on this planet. And that's where these memories of the mermaids and mermen come from. And so that's another book I wrote called On Hybrids, So You Think You're Human.
Yep.
But so we look at that as part of the spiritual lineage. And lastly, we look at our soul ancestors, and our soul ancestors is there a lineage that you are related to? I am related to this whole Paramahansa Yogananda, Mahavatar Babaji lineage.
Yeah.
So that is important that I know what that is, because that does not go away. So when we look at ancestors, you can see that it is multidimensional. It isn't just blood in this line, this horizontal, it's also this way.
Yeah. It's like
Yep.
the
Space
tree.
and time.
Yeah. The tree
So
turns
well
into a
said.
forest after a while.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really think that this is a deep study, and First Nations peoples of all over the world talk about ancestors, and it is how have we lost this?
Yeah. Because we think about ancestors just in a blanket statement. We think about, like, great, 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 great grandfather.
Linear bloodline.
Yeah, where there could be
Yeah.
some trace in what we call the ability to look back. But again, like, how would someone come up with the idea of an alien if they weren't part alien from that lineage? Like, how would they? Because I don't believe we can imagine beyond the place in which it already exists. Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine something that doesn't exist? No. So some people might imagine aliens, some people might imagine something else, but the person, like, that can't be true because I can't imagine. I'm like, well, maybe you're not part of that lineage, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Like, how did mermaids, how did all these different leprechauns,
Yep.
like,
Elemental.
where did these come from? Right. Well, they are. And what are they there for? Well, they're here to help us on this journey, because, like, every great coach that played the sport can see something, and even if they weren't a great player, can see something that the great player cannot. And he gets
Oh,
the great
yes.
player's ear and says, listen, all right, I've been here, you have a higher aptitude of this sport, but I can see something you can't. And he whispers in the player's ear, and then the player scores a touchdown, whatever the game may be. You get what I'm saying? But it was the coach, the ancestor, that let us know, okay, I'm up against something. Where do I go? Well, local history isn't going to help us here because we've never been here. But the ancestors have been through these cycles, and they get like, okay, this is where we went wrong. Or I don't want to use the word wrong, but this can aid you in the direction which you want to go. Just listen. And you have to go to the sacred place to find it. It's not in the library. It's in the Akashic records. It's not in the library in your local town.
Yeah. It's going deeper and deeper into our own. When we do our ancestral work, we go deeper and deeper into our own history. As you say, the Akashic records, and it's like the soul history unfolds for us so that we see the whole picture. It broadens our view of reality, and also I think it shows us which way to go in our own life.
Yeah.
And why we have certain gifts, because each of these hybrids have specific gifts, and some of them have difficulties too. So it's good to know, hey, this is why I have this particular gift.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on extraterrestrial ancestry?
Star beings, yeah, I think that that's very true.
We're just starting to see a lot more of that in the media and stuff like that,
Yes,
nowadays. And I believe that's just because this is getting harder and harder to control the narrative around that. And a lot of people, I mean, at
yeah.
least like my generation, everybody knows that there's life on other planets, et cetera. There's so much, evidence that, that exists. That it's getting more and more normal. And so as this is breaking more and more into everyone's consciousness, I see it, in just the media, the television show, the movies, etc. And more people are opening up to this. Do you see this more as ourselves coming back to ourselves?
I see it that we are moving, as we've spoken, into this higher astral realms, and that in these astral realms, these different kingdoms are. So just like we're the earth realm, we've got the earth, there's like a dragon world, there's a mermaid world, there's an angel world. And as we're starting to move into these astral realms, we're starting to get more bleed through from that. And as you say, there can no longer be a cover up that there are beings who have been on this earth before. I mean, another group that we haven't discussed are the elves.
Yeah.
And they talk about the elves, which are the same as the Elohim in the early books of the Bible, and that these were star beings.
You consider yourself an elf, correct?
I believe I
You
am,
identify.
actually.
Yeah, I've heard you share that information before.
Yeah.
From
Hey.
Sirius, right?
You've done, yeah, I believe that is my original ancestry, and that originally I came from Sirius.
Serious?
Yep.
All right.
And I have had an experience of going to Sirius. And I don't mean a visualization, I mean an experience of going to Sirius. So I believe that, and other people who would be of that lineage that we would know of would be like the Dalai Lama, I believe.
Yeah.
Mother Teresa, I
Yep.
believe. These are Nelson Mandela.
Mhm.
These are people who have that particular L lineage. And it's interesting that the word L and elemental and body elemental, because I believe that the L's really always wanted to help the elementals, which are the builders of form on this physical world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't talk about that, Mike, until really this last maybe 5 years that I've even said it publicly, because once again, it's like, all right,
Exactly. No,
you
I know what you
know,
Yeah. What I get from you is
Hats off to you.
yeah, you're highly aware of how most people will think in order to know when to say it. Because I've heard people say this stuff before, and okay, I can know something. I'm like, okay, there's some truth there, but Mike, they sound crazy to the rest of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
But you somehow present things where it doesn't sound crazy, and I'm very keen and aware of sounding crazy, even though I have the thought. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to. Why don't you say something, like, because it would have made them uncomfortable, and when it wouldn't have done any good at the moment in time. Like, and it's not me logically; it's me instinctively knowing when to say something, when not. But there were times when I didn't listen to my instinct that said something. People like, come again, and like, oh, then back out of that thing, and just like,
Again,
yeah.
the heavy conditioning, et cetera, but there's something there.
yeah.
And you nailed it earlier,
Yeah.
Tanis, it's the frequency. Truth recognizes truth. Real recognizes real. And there's just something about the way you, even like that you bring that up, like, hey, this is something I didn't talk about a lot of, because I didn't know how it would be perceived. But to share something like that, there's like this level of genuine, like it's like you're opening up, your heart, your soul even further, and that allows people to see in. And again, you're acting as the light, allowing others to rise up to that same frequency, rise up to that vibration.
Well, but first of all, I had to write the book so that people could see. I talk about 22 possible hybrids so that people could see that each person has one of these lineages, and how wonderful that is. I think one of the things that has helped me always is I don't usually just come out of the blue. I want to be able to give steps for people that they can follow something to that, rather than just that final point. And you know what profession showed me how to do this? It was when I was a corporate consultant and I had to work with both engineers and accountants.
Yep.
They're both logical.
Yeah. And if you can give logical, good reasons for why they should be lying down on the floor in their 3-piece suits, meditating and doing guided visualizations, they'll do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
It's
100%.
when they go to the bar later that day, they have to explain to their friends, like, I don't know how to explain this.
Yeah. Again, you're so right. And it gives them that something tangible for them to buy in. And they're like, no, this is right. And they follow. And that's how you hook that personality or that soul stream or whatever you want to call it. I love that you brought that up.
Because there is something interesting about that structure of mind that an engineer has. And what I like, because especially scientists, they have to be proven through analytics that it works. But once it is, they let go.
Yeah.
Because there is this playing, like I fall in the middle where, like, I don't want to come across as gullible, but now I get to a point where I know. And now when I know something, I'm like, okay, how do I explain this to myself and others? And then the journey begins. It's kind of like when Einstein came up with the E=mc². The idea came to him when he was about 12 to 16 years old. It took him to 26 before he actually published it. So he took it anywhere from 10, depending on who I read about Einstein, and say it was 16. So it took him about 10 years for him to come up with this E=mc². And the thing about that equation is there was nothing he drew from before that. It wasn't like I studied this guy's work and studied that guy's work and put it together. And this is what I got. And the other scientists were like, oh my God, we've never seen the universe that way. Well, Einstein's like, well, it just came to me when I was a child, 16 years old or 12, depends who you listen to. And then for the rest of that time, he just contemplated, how do I explain this? And I think the universe says, well, you have to live it. So it's going to take you 10 years. And then when you live it, like you talk about, then you can write about it. But just because a thought comes to your head, you haven't, like the idea of me going on vacation doesn't mean I went. The process. And he went through the process and he showed it to the rest of the world. And even he didn't know what this process was going to develop because he wasn't around to see the internet. But yet without that understanding, so it's kind of like what our ancestors are going to do for us. They're going to give us something. Okay, here's the next nugget. It's going to take it to that next level. But you have to live it before you can explain it. Otherwise, you sound like a fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you do that very well. You explain it, like Mike said earlier, as it's fact to you. And you can tell when I'm reading your book, I can tell just by talking to you, you know this stuff. And what you know, you know.
And I think that truth evolves, that we let go of one truth to embrace a higher truth, and that will attract people who are receptive and open and resonating at a frequency that our truth is at. And this is a beautiful thing. And to know that, sometimes people say, oh, I'm going through such a sad time. I've lost my job, they fired me. And I'll say, well, you're resonating at a different level. You can't be in that job anymore.
Yeah.
Or they'll say, I'm going through a sad time because my old friends don't want to talk to me or know me anymore. And I'll say, it's because you're now resonating at a different frequency and new friends will come. It's this death and rebirth, this spiral cycle we're on of evolving frequency, evolving truth.
Yeah. Actually, in the beginning of this book, I've heard this analogy used before with the caterpillar and the butterfly, but I like the way you presented the analogy. Because, the caterpillar starts to struggle before it goes in the cocoon. It has no idea what's on the other end of the butterfly, but that's the transitional period you go through. But I think our ancestors are letting us know, listen, you're a caterpillar and you eat and devour everything in front of you, but one day you'll be floating and giving back.
Yeah.
The butterfly does. So we have this awareness, even though we're still a caterpillar now, which
Yes,
I find so I can
we
willingly
are.
go into cocoon. It's still a little uncomfortable. It's still tight. It's like, oh, I'm coming here. One day I'll start to fly, but when's it going to happen?
Seriously.
Well, haven't we all been in a forced cocoon for 3 years with COVID?
Yeah.
It's put us in a forced cocoon. And during that process of transmutation, the caterpillar actually digests itself. Digests itself. And this is what we have to do. We have to digest all our old thought forms and programs that we don't want anymore. Move it up and out. And we need to strip away this ancestral patterns, expand them so we see the whole story of our lineage, our whole lineage. And then we're our authentic selves. We're digesting.
That's beautifully said. That's beautifully said. You eat up. So you're eating up the old concepts of who we once were in order to digest and give birth to this new concept. But you can't
the authentic self.
You can't speed through it. You actually have to go through the buffet.
Yeah.
Like it's like what we said, don't leave any food on your plate. It's like, all right, you got to eat it all. But then you get dessert. So if you eat everything, you get dessert. Wow, that was beautifully said. That was really well said.
So with this ancestor, is it a course that you'll be putting out? So what's happening on May 1st with this information?
Well, we're going to put out a 2-course package, the complete set. Okay. So we do this lineage here, the blood lineage and the tribe and the nations, and we do the past lives and hybrids and soul, so that people will get it. Yeah, and they can do it as self-study, or they can do it in groups as in groups. So yeah.
How long is that course?
However long it takes them to complete it. Okay. It's done in 5 modules. Okay. So it could be done in 5 weeks. It could be done in a longer period of time, whatever they feel comfortable with. It's always free choice, isn't it? Free will and free choice.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like it takes me a couple minutes to eat a hot dog. But if you go to hot dog eating contest, they could eat like 20 of them at the same time. It's like,
yes,
down like that was quick.
Yeah. But they might have won, but did they enjoy it?
They did. Yeah. That does not look enjoyable to me. I want to taste my hot dog.
I want to ask you a couple questions. So number one, you shared I'm glad you brought this up and you even started this broadcast with it, but I wanted to ask you about that story when you were 6 or 7, I personally believe we all have the gift of telepathy. I believe that's how, something we can all do, in sharing. And it's something that we brought up and talked about on this show in the past. I know you see this clearly as a gift that you possess. You've also mentioned that you have the gift of being able to, I believe it's see one's soul, like see another individual's soul. Can you talk about your thoughts on, does everybody have this gift of telepathy, number one? And then number two, what about this level of being able to actually see the soul, as you say it, and listen to the soul?
I believe everyone has the gift, and it's this stripping away process. The best thing we can do is to do our own work of restoring ourselves to our authentic selves, just like we're saying, and not spend all of our time just working on me, but to realize that everything we do is going to affect others. And so day by day, minute by minute, we are also in service to others. So it's always for me a both and, not an either or.
I like that. I like
Mhm.
this and that, not this or that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But as we go through this stripping, whether it's our ancestral work or it's the etheric clearing work, or working with our body elemental, with like Good Morning Henry, no matter which way we go in, we are trying to become our authentic selves, and our authentic self is awake and alive in the astral world. It practices telepathy, and it can travel in space and time. It's just like Star Trek.
Yeah.
Right. It is everything that you saw in Star Trek 40 years ago
Yeah.
is now.
Yeah.
Only this idea of technology being needed, like what we're doing right now, of course, I'm happy for it, but this is a temporary step.
Yes.
It's very temporary, and it's just to get us into the astral, where we'll be doing it without this technology.
Because we are the technology, and the technology such as this computer and my iPhone is just a representation of what we can maybe understand at this realm. But a lot of people think we need it. I'm like, well, we don't. At some level, we won't need any of it. Like one day someone could hike to the top of Mount Everest and have their buddy tap into what they see, so to speak. But right now, we're giving our weight to the technology. But I also believe it's helping us know that
It's
one
possible.
day it's possible. And that's the brilliance of it. So there's two ways to look at it. One, it could hold you back, and the other one, it could excel you. So it's not this or, it's this and that, because to me, technology is brilliant because it's showing us parts of who we are. And at some
Yes.
level, we won't need this. We can just tap into it. But right now, because I'm not there, it's nice that we have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interconnecting us globally, and
Yeah.
that's what we are, global.
Yeah. We're very gold. Yeah.
It's
So-
so nice.
When you say you can see souls or listen to a soul, is this something like you can see an aura or a field around someone? What's how would you kind of describe that?
Well, first of all, I only listen and look at people as deeply as they're comfortable being seen.
I'm glad
or
you brought that up. I was going to mention that.
Yeah, I think this is my own ethical standard, which I've had since age 6, when I discovered that I could do that others didn't always. So we have to have ethics about that. But for me, it's not that no, it's more a knowing, Mike. It's more of a just listening. There's higher senses. There's higher senses of sight. There's higher senses of listening, higher senses of feeling. And it's using these higher clairvoyances, clairaudiences, and clairsentience is what I do when I'm listening, knowing their soul.
Can I invite you in to look at my soul? How does that work? I mean, like if I were to say something like that to you and open myself up, how would you go about? Is that something that you use a tool in order to help people on their path?
No, I would just do it, but I don't do it. I do not do that to people professionally anymore,
Okay.
and I certainly wouldn't do it on air.
Right. I just figured I'd like to bring that up because again,
Yeah, I
the show is
wouldn't
about
do
showing
it on.
people possibilities.
I wouldn't do it on air because you would be opening yourself way more vulnerable to me than maybe you would want. And because I'm a very honest person, what I would be in a dilemma. So we would have to head that off in the past, you know. Yeah, people
Now,
yeah.
you just
You know
you just
what?
intrigued the audience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
No.
the point.
Yeah.
What it
These are
says
things
to
people
me,
want to know more about.
Yeah.
yeah, of course. But what it says to me is that you are an amazingly curious, courageous person, that you would invite me to do that and to say that on air. And these are two qualities that we need at this time. We need curiosity and openness, and we need courage.
Yeah.
And so I think we should leave the audience knowing that about you.
Yeah.
You're courageous.
I like that.
And curious.
Thank you for sharing that. It's just one of those things that, it really stuck with me as I was just researching and learning more about you. I was like, that skill set is so intriguing. And I do believe, others can access that. And
I
you're
teach
that light.
people.
Yeah.
That is what I do. I believe that I'm here not to be a medium, not to be a professional psychic, but to teach people how to do it themselves. All my work is devoted to that.
Yeah.
Gosh, it was beyond a pleasure speaking with you today.
Yeah.
Dennis, this was very eye-opening. I know our listeners, are going to enjoy this. For those listening right now who want to tune into a course of yours, purchase a course of yours, get a book of yours, where are some different online websites, or how can we find you? And we're going to put this information across the bottom of the screen as well. But do you have a website? Do you have any social media that you would direct people to? How do they obtain these courses and modules?
My website I'd use would be www.
Yep.
myspiritualtransformation.com.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, they could also go to my personal one, which is tanishelliwell.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they could probably find everything from there.
Yeah, but most of the courses are on myspiritualtransformation.com. And of course, the books are on Amazon.
Yep.
They're also on my website.
All right. Perfect.
It has been such a treat meeting you.
This is a real treat for us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, eyes wide open. It is such an experience speaking with you directly.
Yeah.
You've got this contagious energy about you, Tanis, and it's exciting.
Yeah. It's nice to know that the individuals out there like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that there are individuals out there like you. And where are you two in Arizona? Whereabouts?
Yeah,
Should I
so
come
In
there?
the Phoenix area.
Yep, Phoenix Metro.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now we're in a city called Chandler, which is part of the Phoenix area. So yeah.
Oh, good.
And we're not too far from Sedona. A lot of people have heard of Sedona, of course, just because of its, vortexes and spiritual experiences and all that great stuff. So Frank and I like to frequently go up there.
Yeah.
That's only how far is that?
2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours. So it's a hop and a skip for us.
That's good.
We've got the Grand Canyon. We got a ton of great things about Arizona. So it's a cool place to be. Have you ever visited?
I have. I took people on sacred sites of First Nation sacred sites, and we went to all the Hopi and Navajo and Anasazi sites, and that was wonderful. And we went to Sedona, but I have never been to the Grand Canyon, and I want to go.
Oh yeah,
beautiful.
It's pretty grand.
One other thing that I need to have you mention, what's the name of your institute and how can they find out more about your institute online?
Well, it's called the International Institute for Transformation, but we don't have a website for that anymore because we junked it and
Okay.
became myspiritualtransformation.com. Because it's interesting, you know, when we first started this institute in the year 2000, January of 2000, we had a great group of people who said it has to be called the International Institute for Transformation. And that was okay. But I don't like the word institute.
Okay.
And what we're really about is my spiritual transformation, as in for everybody to say, it's my spiritual transformation.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what we're helping people with.
Beautiful.
It's been a treat.
You're doing
It's been
amazing
a
job.
treat.
Yeah.
It has. And
Yeah.
we'll have to have you back on. You know,
We'll definitely. Yeah.
we will touch base with you. We wish you all the best with the upcoming future endeavors, especially with the ancestor, kickoff that you have going here or coming here, I should say, in May. So best of luck with that. That's very exciting. Other than that, we wish you best on your journey.
I wish both of you best on your journey too. And it has been a real treat and we've had fun.
Yes, we did.
We
Yeah.
did. And time flies by.
And that's the way it always should be, having fun.
Yes.
It is.
Bless you, Tanis.
Thank you so
Bless
much for joining us today. We'll be in touch and take care. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Okay,
All right.
bye-bye.
Thanks,
Enjoy.
Tanis.